Hello and welcome back to Stationeers. I'm Mick. Today we're playing around with the mining rocket. We're going to do a script and make this thing work for us the way we want it to work. If nothing else, we'll see a lot of cool rocket launches. Well, let's get into it. Now, the automated mining rocket is a bit of an interesting one. This one there, rather simple to write a script to control it. It does come in a lot of different varieties. So we do have a number of components for it. Aside from the launch pad and engines, we have the fuel tank. We can have ice mining modules. We can have ore mining modules. We can have gas mining modules. And we have scrap mining modules. They can be put together in any number of configurations. We can have multiple fuel tanks, multiple storage silos, and yeah, so I don't really want to have to write a separate script or a script that you have to change to do each one of them. So I just want to write one script that is going to work for all rocket configurations and not have to change anything. So you can just lay it down on the launch pad and it'll work straight off the bat and do what you want it to do. The way I'm going to do it is by using batch writing commands to each of the modules. If you hook each module up to a pin on your chip, as soon as you change that module, you've got to hook the new module up to the pin on the chip. And if you try and run the program without that there, you'll get an error. If you've got multiple modules there, you've got to hook up multiple things there, and we've only got a few pins there, so a huge rocket won't work. So if you use batch commands, a batch command will write out to multiple items. If there are multiple fuel tanks there, it'll have them all there. So when you ask for the amount of fuel it's got, if you then add it together, it'll give you the total result there. If you have multiple cargo mining modules, just get it to add the result of what the contents are. If you have multiple ice mining modules, when you tell them to activate, they'll all activate. But if you don't have any ice mining modules there, if you tell ice mining modules to activate when they're not there, they won't throw an error. They'll just ignore the command. So I'll batch write each of the devices there instead of having a direct link to a pin. So that'll create a few interesting little bits of coding there for it, but it's the way we work. Now, so I've got a basic setup here. The rocket is on the ground. It has an ice mining module and an ore mining module in its current configuration with one storage silo in between them both. Now, when you're using the mining module, it's important to have the coupler in the middle with the little arrows there pointing towards the storage module. So I've got an ice mining module just above the fuel tank. The coupler is pointing towards this storage storage module here, the silo. And above that I have an ore mining module, once again with a coupling module below that with a little arrow pointing down into this one here. So you must have your mining module adjacent to a storage silo with a coupler in between, otherwise the rocket won't know where to put all the ore. I've got a few displays set up to give us a few things from the rocket itself. The mode, which tells us what it's doing. 0, which is what it is at the moment, it's just sitting here. 1 for launching, 2 for travelling, 3 for arrived, 4 is waiting at its destination, 5 is returning home, and 6 is at home back on the launch pad. I have the fuel. I have a fuel pump hooked up to the back. So if I switch that on, it shows the fuel going in. And the amount of minables in there is currently empty, so it should be, although I do seem to be having a bit of a spam error on that one at the moment, so hopefully I'll sort that one out as I go along. Don't know what I've done wrong there. But anyway, on we go. So those ones are coming directly from reader and writer chips from the command module itself. So they have nothing to do with the chip. At the back, that's all hooked up. Everything's wired up, got all the fuel going into everything. I have got a chute. It comes down to a couple of sorters with crushers for my volatiles and oxides, which then go into my fuel storage tanks, which go through a mixer and back into my fuel storage tank. I'm stuck on something. Now, that is a big tank of fuel. There is a fuel pump there. That is what's filling up our rocket. So all the gas gets mixed into fuel as soon as I get it, and hopefully it doesn't get too hot and explode. That'll just be a bad day. Right, now that we've got the rocket built, let's have a little look at it and see how it runs. Now we start by giving it a mode. We've got it fueled up. As I said, our minables is working. Right. Okay. Now let's give it a go. So we start by giving it a mode 1 and writing that into our automated rocket automation module to automate it. So we've got that set to the activate. So if we set that to 1, which is our launch, away it goes. Now once it gets out to site, that should change to a 4 to say it's at its destination and doing absolutely nothing. So I shall want another switch to actually activate the mining modules. Okay, just switched up a couple of batch writers, working out to the ice and ore mining ones. It says there's one mineable. Oh, it just says that says one mineable, doesn't actually say how many is there. It just says there is something mineable there. So if we switch that on, we're still in mode 4. That should eventually change to a 0, I'm guessing, once we've run out of things to mine. And I should have hooked up something to it. Actually tells us how much there we go. Okay, so it's run out of things to mine. It is sitting in 4. So that will just stay at mode 4 when it's there. Even if it is doing something, even if it's mining, it's still going to stay as a 4. So from there, we need to tell it to go to the next site. Should I give it a 2 or give it a? I'll give it a 1 again. No, maybe I'll give it a 2. Oops, 2. Okay, now we're going to the next site. Okay, travelling there, it should go to 4 once it's arrived there, and we can start mining again, or we can just call it back. So that will be a 5. 5, do that. Mode 5, we're coming back. So it's returning home at 6 when it gets here, and it should land. Glorious. Okay, so that's basically what we wanted to do. So we can, we just want it to launch, wait till it gets to mode 4. It will unload. It's already unloading everything. Thank you for that. So now it will launch. It will get to mode 4. We will wait, or launch, we'll have to wait till it gets to mode 4. Once it's got to mode 4, we shall activate the mining modules. Once the minables gets to 0, we can move to the next site, or we'll just tell it to come back after that. So if we can get it to do that, fully automatic, we can then build on it from there. Okay, so I've got our system set up here. I've got the fuel pump connected to D0. That's a pump that just refuels the rocket. I have some displays for the mode, the fuel, the minables, and the cargo on board. Just 4 displays. You don't really need them there, but it's just handy information to go to let us know the script's actually working. And I have a recall lever hooked up onto D5. Now I have defined our devices there because we're going to use batch commands to write to them all. So we've got to get the hash values for all of those items, and I've also defined a maximum and minimum fuel. The maximum fuel is what we're going to fill it up to. The minimum fuel will be when we call it back. I think it's only 500 you need to get it back, but we'll give it a bit of a buffer there just in case. Right, so we shall start with great spelling. Start the usual way. We should put in our pause, and it once again jumped to the start once we get to the end. So it is all on the ground. We shall want to Actually, let's not jump back to the start at the moment. Let's just hash that one out. We will want to later on, but we'll just comment that one out for now, because we will just want the program to end after it's been up and down once. So from there, we shall want to save batch to the command module, activate 1, which will tell it to launch. Right, so now we'll have to wait for it to get to the mining location. So it'll be travelling now, it'll be in mode 2. So we will just want to set up another tag. We'll just call it travel. So we shall wait as part of that loop. We shall load into R0. Actually, we'll have to load batch because it's going to be a batch command. The command module mode. So now we shall display that on the screen so we can see what's going on. So we shall save to mode setting R0. Done. Now we want to check and wait till we've got to mode 4. So we shall branch not equal. If R0 is not equal to 4, it hasn't got there, go back to travel. So it's just going to sit in this loop here until it gets to mode 4. So once we get to mode 4, we've got to turn on all of our devices. So it has arrived at site. So now we shall want to save batch ice miner activate 1, and we'll want to do that with all of the miners there, because we can. It doesn't matter if we don't have the miners there, because it won't throw an error if we don't have anything there. That's ore. Well, that is gas, and that will be our junk. Okay, it's a salvage module, but it usually turns up with a load of junk, so we'll call it junk. Right. So once they've all started, we now have to wait until it's collected all the minables. We want to wait till our minables reaches 0. So once again, we'll go into another waiting loop, which we shall call mining. So once again, we shall load batch into R0. Command, it is collectible goods. Not capitals. Collectible goods, yes. I was sure I was going to have to look that one up. Right, so collectible goods. Once again, being a load batch, we will have to say, give them a type. We're getting it there. So we only have one command mod. Doesn't matter what aggregator we're using there. So we just use average. And once again, average is our aggregator for that because there's only one command pod. Now, once again, we shall write that onto the display to keep them up to date. So save. Save, is it minables we called it? I can't remember now. Minables. Save, M-A. Save, minables. Setting 0. Now, we shall, if it equals 0, we're done, we can move on. So we shall branch equal to, branch not equal to 0. So if it's not equal to 0, we've got to keep mining. So mining, branch if R0 is not equal to 0. Go back to mining and we'll just read it again. We better put our yield in there. Right. So once that has all happened, we shall return. So when it's returning, we shall, well, I guess we've got to wait for it to get back, don't we? So when we are returning, we shall say save batch command activate, it was 5 I think to bring it back home. Right, and that's all we had to do, and it'll come back home from there, and the program will end because we don't have our jump back to the start again. Right, confirm. Let's export that. And now once it launches, it should go up. So if I switch that on, if there's no errors, we should be launching. Away we go. We'll be waiting till it reaches mode 4. Switch mode 4. It should now be mining. And once that gets back to 0, it should come back down to the ground for us. Now, obviously, I'm going to have to put in some things there to make the fuel counter and the cargo counter work, but we'll get to that. Once we got it to land, we'll fix them up. If it works. Of course it'll work. I can override it with that switch if it doesn't work. It's always handy to have an override switch on your rocket there, a manual one there, so you can bring it back if your program goes wrong. Okay, there we go. Minables has gone to 0. Now our mode should have gone to 5, which it has over there, but our display's not updating, so I'll have to fix that as well. Should be on its way back. I'll switch to a 6 when it's arrived. There we go. Oh! Right, back we go. Now, so we want to change, put in our fuel. So while we are mining and while we are travelling, we want to have a look at the fuel. So as we are travelling, we shall put into here, shall load batch into R0 command fuel average, and we should just immediately save that to fuel setting R0. So that'll just read the fuel and update it. So we want to do that while it's travelling and while it's mining as well. So we'll just reproduce that into here. Copy you to there, copy you to there. Right, now while it's mining, we'd also like it to update the contents of the display there, the cargo. So we have on there, we have our silo and we have our cargo display there. So while it's in the mining section here, we shall want to load batch into R0 from the silo quantity, I think it is. Now we could have more than one silo there, so we shall take the sum of them all there, which will save into cargo setting R0. So that's just purely a cosmetic look on that one there. They don't really do anything to the actual operation of the rocket. Right, so confirm that. You can export you again. And away we go. So now it's travelling, it's updating our fuel. Once it gets to site, the mineable should go to 1. The minables should already be at 1. And now the cargo should rise. So it starts mining. There we go. So that actually lets us know that it is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing and picking stuff up. There is stuff there. We're in mode 4 and how much fuel we got left. Now, instead of just going up and coming down again, we may want it just to move on to another location while it still has enough fuel there. So once again, we can do that. Once it reaches that reaches a 0, instead of coming home, we can put in a different loop. So as that will actually then jump to another location. Right. But before we do that, we might want to actually get away. That will just build it into a constant loop. We may actually want a way to bring the thing back home again before we do that. Now, I do have that. I have a lever here, which I put in to actually recall it. So we'll actually have it open to let it launch, and when we want it to come back, we'll just close it back up again. Right. So we'll put in something to check for the lever and bring it back. And we also want to check when it's running low on fuel, so we're going to check pretty much the same check there, and then just check for low fuel. So we shall have a look at that. Right, so we'll go for this. We'll just go in the mining phase for that. You could put it in the travelling phase as well, but we'll just say, as long as we make sure we've got enough fuel to travel to the next spot. That's why I've got this to 1,000 instead of the 500, because if we try and call that, we'll have to put a test in while it's actually travelling. So we'll give it a bit of a leeway so it's got enough fuel to get to the next site before we actually test for the recall. So we shall load into R0 the recall. What's that, the setting? I shall say branch equal to 0. So if R0 is equal to 0, it means you want it to come back. We shall go to return. Right. Now we have already read the fuel, so that'll return us from there. So we've already read the fuel. So we shall say there, we've written the fuel, so now we shall branch less than. So if the fuel R0 is less than min fuel, which we've defined up the top of the code, return. So once again, it'll just jump straight down to here and go back to what we're doing. Right, so that'll have our escape from that loop there, should we ask it to. So now that we have a way of bringing the thing back, all we need to do now is tell this to then go back to another location and mine. So we can save batch to the command. It was activate to tell it to go to the next spot, and then all we've got to do is jump back up to our travel, which was up here. Oh no, we're going to put in a, oh yeah, travel, sorry, there we are. So we shall go back up to travel. So just a straight jump to travel. So it's an unconditional jump. It'll just go permanently into that loop and do that sequence there, mine till we've run out, then back up to the top, travel the new site, mine until we're done, until we get the lever or we get the low fuel warning on it. Confirm. Now we're running out of fuel, so we shall export that. And away we go. Right, so we're on site, we're mining. We should be mining. There we go, we're mining. Now I'm not going to wait for it to run out of fuel, so we can then just test the lever. If I pull that lever, it should go to mode 5. It's not updating the display there. Okay, so it has gone to mode 5 from what you see on that one there, but I'll have to get it to update the display when it's on its way back as well. Okay, we're back. Right, so now I don't want to have to restart the code every single time I do that. So we're going to put in a bit of extra code there to hold it on the launch pad that will refuel it, make sure it's empty, and make sure that we've given it the launch command before it actually sets off. So we're going to have to do 3 checks on it there while it's sitting on the launch pad. So we shall check the fuel. If it's not fueled, we'll add some fuel. Check the cargo. If it's not empty, empty it. And we shall check the lever. If the lever's not right to go, we are not good to go. Right, so that's what we want to do. So we edit up. Now, on the way back, we might just want to cheat into here and save to mode setting 5 to let it know it's coming back. Okay, so from there we will jump back to the start. We probably won't do that yet. We'll just make sure we're getting it right before we launch it up. Now, when we are sitting at the start, instead of just sending a command activate, we are going to have to do a few checks before we get there. Right, so first up we want to check the fuel. So we shall load batch from the command fuel. Let's try load it into R0. Command fuel average, doesn't really matter once again. Right, so that'll get us a fuel. If the fuel is less than the fuel load we want to actually fuel it up. So we shall set less than, set R0 if R0 is less than max fuel. So if it's not refueled, we get if it doesn't have enough fuel, we get a true reading. So from there, save into the fuel pump on R0. So if there's not enough fuel, it'll switch the pump on. If there is enough fuel, it'll switch the pump off. Right, but that's telling us whether it's on off. So we want to know if we're good to launch. So if there is enough fuel, we're good to launch. But if there is enough fuel, we've got a value of 0. So we should just set equal to 0. Set R0 if R0 is equal to 0. So if it's equal to 0, change it to 1. If it's not equal to 0, change it to a 0. So now if R0 is 1, it means we're ready to launch. Well, we have enough fuel. But that's not the only condition we have there. So we shall load batch. We're using R0, so we shall go to, well, let's actually do something weird here, and I shall actually name a variable, which I don't normally do because I usually don't use my variables very much. So alias, let's say R10. Launch ready. Let's get that one around the right way, shall we? I said I normally don't do that. There we go. Launch ready. So we shall set launch ready. That's not what I want. Let's set down there. Launch is ready. Right, so we'll set launcher ready if that's equal to 0, meaning we have enough fuel. Now we shall load batch into R0. We want to test the cargo. Silo quantity sum. RTO. Actually, while we're here, let's save the update the displays. Setting R0, because we've just read it there. We shall save cargo setting 0. Right, so we shall come down to here. So if the cargo is greater than 0, we want to open the cargo bays. So we shall set greater than 0. So if R0 is greater than 0, set R0 to 1. So we shall save batch to silo, activate R0. Right, so that one will open the silos if there is something there to not. If there's nothing there, it'll close them. Right, so it'll empty them out. So when it reads 0, it means we're good to go. So once again, we shall set equal to 0. If R0 is equal to 0, set it to 1, which means we're good to launch. So we shall have, so we have enough fuel. If that equals 1, we now have the cargo bays empty if that equals 1. So we shall have to and launch ready, our previous value of that, ready, and the new value we've just tested. So this is just an and, say we do have fuel loaded, we do have the cargo empty. Right, so the last thing we have to check is our launch lever. So we shall load into R0, recall setting. Well, that is just going to be a 1 or a 0, so that's exactly what we want there. We don't have to perform any calculations on that one. So once again, we shall just do exactly the same thing again. Boom. So this time we're taking the existing value of launch ready command and combining it with the new one, which is the recall lever setting. So once again, we have to get a true from that one, we have to get a true from that, the silos, we have to get a true from this one, and then we're ready to launch. So if it gets to this point and launch ready is 0, branch equal to 0, launch ready, so it's not ready, go back to the start. Right, if it is ready, well then we can launch it, of course. Then it goes into its travel command, it'll do everything it has to do, and there we go. Right, so now we are not ready to launch. If we export, have I made a mistake in any of that stuff there? We're not updating the display, so I might want to put a little thing on there to update those displays as well. So while we're here, we shall load batch into R0, command mode average, and save to mode display setting R0. So that's into the display. We could change the minables as well, couldn't we? So load batch R0. What was it called? Minables available. Collectible goods, wasn't even close. The collectible goods, average, save, minables, the display, setting R0. Right, so they're just updating a couple of displays. We load our command mod and everything else. Right, so export that. Right, now our displays have updated. Right, it is refueled to our 5,000 that we wanted, a little bit extra just for luck. And away we go. Now we still haven't launched, our cargo is empty, our fuel is good, we're good, but our switch is not. So I should just have to launch that, and we're good. So pull the switch, away we go. That's travelling to site. It's arrived at site, there is stuff to mine there. It will go up, we're good. Once it's mined everything, that should change to a 0. We should go back to mode 2 and travel to another site and start mining again. Unless I've stuffed it up. We're still good. No errors on there yet. We've got the 0. That's it. We're moving to our next place. We get to 4. We're there. There's stuff to mine. It continues mining. Well, that's good. That's what we wanted to do. Once again, it'll continue mining until it gets to its running out of fuel or our lever is pulled. Pull our lever. We're into mode 5. We're on our way back. Once again, our fuel is not updating. I can see on the one over there it is. Okay, we're back on the ground. Now it has just stopped there because that's what the code says to do. But we can quite comfortable that it's doing the right thing now, so I shall send it back to the start once it's all finished. Right, confirm that one. So now, export. Now it's refueling, so it's the program started again. We can see it unloading the cargo. You can see it unloading the cargo absolutely everywhere. Fine organisation systems that rocket's got. I can vouch for that. It works perfectly. Everything's where it's meant to be. Now if I say launch, the fuel's good, but it's still unloading, so don't launch. As soon as it reaches 0, we're good to go. Arrived at site, then we should start mining, which we are. As soon as the ice stops melting over there, we should be safe to land the rocket again. Now I can pull the lever, bring it back down. We're into mode 5. Now it should have jumped back to the start of the program there, where it is now. So we're now updating the fuel and the mode as it does at the start of the program. Right. So while it's on its way back, it is trying to reload the rocket. We might have to put another wait sequence at the end, so it just waits until it gets back to 0. Right. So it's on its way back. We shall just call it wait. Yield. We shall have to update our displays again. Is our fuel. We shall want to fuel, our mode, so we shall load our fuel, update the display, load our mode, update the display, and we shall, now that we've loaded the mode, we shall branch 6 is when it comes back, or 0 is when it's landed. So branch not equal to 0. If R0 is not equal to 0, wait. Right, so I'll just go into this loop here, just updating the displays. until we get back to mode 0, which is when it's landed and it's waiting on the launch pad. Then we go back to the start, then we can unload it, then we can refuel it. So that should be what we're after there. So we've got them there, they are good. Now I might just set my fuel, minimum fuel, we'll just test that one before we get too much further. I'll set that to 4,000. Right. Now, export you. We're all still happy. Good. So now if I put the lever, away it goes. Now I'll just let it go until it gets down to 4,000 fuel, at which point it should return. Now it's reached 0, it's travelling to its next location. Now if it reaches, if we get down to our return point while it's travelling, it's not going to come back. It'll have to wait until it actually arrives at the next location before it actually tests that. Yeah, so it's just landed, it's refueled itself, our launch lever is still set to active. As soon as that reaches 0 on the unloader, it should automatically launch itself again. So as long as it's got a supply of fuel there, it will just keep going up and down, unloading itself, making as much of a mess as you like, until you switch it off and tell it to do otherwise. Now this is not throwing an error anymore, so it must be just before you've actually launched it for the first time. I'd say that's throwing an error because it must have a null value in there because it hasn't been set to a 1 or a 0, so it's just spamming an error. So it's there we go. So yeah, fine. If you're getting that error on the minables there, just launch your rocket once and it seems to come good again. Once again, we're flying, we're mining. Okay, we're good enough. You can come back. Now, we're confident that it's all working. It's all doing what we want it to do, so we can set our return fuel. Oh, let's give it, say, 700. Give us a 200 buffer. So I say that we don't set it to exactly 500 because if it's travelling when it gets down to 500, it'll just keep travelling. It won't return until it actually gets to the mine site, at which point it'll have less than 500 and it will be lost. So we'll give it a bit of buffer there. That should be enough to get us to the next site, and we should be good to go. So export that, and we have a fully automated rocket. We probably don't really need that minables display there, but it's there. Well, I suppose you don't really need any of them there, but all you have to do is pull the lever and the rocket will start doing its thing, returning with heaps and heaps of crap for you. So once again, if you switch out these minables for everything else, if you want to put in 2 ore modules, put in 2 ore modules. You do not have to adjust the code. If you want to change it for salvage modules, you don't have to change the code. If you want to put in another ore module and a salvage module and another storage cylinder, put a few more layers up the top there, that's fine. That code will still handle it. You don't have to make any changes. So that is my automated mining rocket. I think that code will be pretty good. Once again, it's all written by batches there, so you can put any configuration you want in there and your code should be able to adapt to it. Now I haven't got anything there to unload the gases, so if you put a gas harvesting module in there, you will have to put, I think you can just dump it straight into the main fuel tank or put in another fuel tank for it if you want. I haven't got any infrastructure here to actually unload that, so you'll have to figure that one out for yourself, because I just usually don't use the gas mining module because I find it comes back with a heap of pollutant and a heap of nitrous oxide and a heap of crap that I actually don't want. So I'm happy with it just mining ice. That's generally the stuff I do want. But there we go. So automated mining rocket, scripted. It'll do what you want. Right. So with that's done, I think that's about all we've got time for today. So till next time, Happy building. See ya. Right, so one of the things I want to check is, can this rocket be made self-sufficient? Now the ice that's coming out of that ice machine is going into ice crushers, which is then going into being crushed in the ice crushers, oddly enough, mixed into fuel. So we can say that we have in there, we have about 22 kilomoles of fuel in there. So if I send it off on a flight, let it burn 1,000, will it replace that? So let her in. So if we bring it back once it's reached this 4,000 fuel, I mean, admittedly it will burn another 500 on the way back, but if you can do that and return with more fuel in the tank than what it left with, we know that one ice miner is enough to actually power it back. Right, there we go, it's on its way back. It burnt 1,000 fuel actually mining. So we started with 22 kilomoles in there. We are finishing with 24 and a half. So it spent 1,000 moles of fuel mining and spent another 500 coming back. So the longer you leave it out there mining, of course, the more efficient it's going to be. But it refueled itself and managed to end up with more fuel than when it started. So just having one ice mining module on the rocket there is enough for it to be fully self-sufficient.